Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome back. Episode 31 of our series, Muhammad, the man who changed the world. In our last episode, we mentioned how the Ahzab, the Confederates, had surrounded Medina. And remember, these are names that you need to know for this episode. The Confederates, or the enemies, are made up of broadly three groups. You have the Quraysh from Mecca, you have the Jewish tribe of Banu Nadir and Khaybar, and then you had a mercenary tribe called the Ghatafan. And they had surrounded Medina, but because of the trench, they were unable to enter Medina. And this trench held out for about 1 month. The Muslims were holding out and able to keep the enemies from invading Medina when the head of the Banu Nadir, Huyay, the architect of the Ahzab, or the architect of the Confederates, he had a plan to get the last remaining tribe in Medina to flip, and he was able to successfully infiltrate Medina. He spoke to the Banu Qurayza, who was the tribe of the last remaining tribe of the Jews in Medina, and then they had flipped, and now it just became a matter of when. When would the enemy stream into Medina and annihilate and kill everybody? And so the mood amongst the Sahaba and what the Prophet ﷺ is a very somber mood, that now their plan has basically come to naught, and they're just waiting day by day. When is the enemy going to deliver that final blow? And it would be in this moment when all hope seemed that it was lost. The Muslims had no clever plan now, no strategy. All they had was dua, when one person, by the grace of Allah, would change the entire battle and turn it on its head. And this person, for the purpose of the series, I'm sure many of us have never heard his name before. His name is Nu'aym ibn Mas'ud radiyallahu anh. Nu'aym ibn Mas'ud. Who is this man? What's he doing? And how does he change the complexion of the battle? Nu'aym is from the Ghatafan. Remember, the Ghatafan were the mercenaries who had come to invade Medina. He came along with the Ghatafan as an enemy to attack Medina and to basically be part of the invading army. Nu'aym is one of the invaders, and he is with the Ghatafan. And he, all of a sudden, leaves the Ghatafan, comes through the trench and meets the Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. Out of nowhere, this man, one of the enemy combatants, comes into Medina and he says, Ya Rasulullah, I can't explain it, but this morning I woke up and I found myself, I'm a Muslim. Allah placed Iman in the heart of this man, and Allah had caused that he was a Muslim, and he feels this overwhelming urge to support the Muslims and save them. And mashallah, this is great, mashallah, it's a Muslim. How Allah sends Iman cannot be explained. But the Prophet says to him, you're only one man, like what can we do? And how do we change the battle? And Nu'aym says, look, I've got a plan, Ya Rasulullah, I've got a strategy, I've got something in mind, but do you give me permission to use deception? And the Prophet ﷺ gave this very profound little statement, which is still used today, al-harbu khida', meaning part of war is deception. One of the strategies of war is to use deception. Side note, there's a difference between deception and treachery and betrayal. What the Banu Qurayza did was betrayal. They broke a promise and alliance. That is un-Islamic, it's unacceptable, and Allah mentions in the Quran that you cannot betray your oaths of allegiance. So if you have an agreement with a group and the situation changes, you cannot break your word, you cannot go against it, you cannot break your alliance and betray the person that you are partnered with. Whereas deception, using misdirection, throwing your enemy off plans, withholding certain information, that's all part of war. And so the Prophet is saying it's part of the stratagems of war is to use deception. So Nu'aym is saying, I've got a plan. He doesn't give the details, and the Prophet says, okay, do what you need to do. And so Nu'aym leaves Medina and he goes back to the Ghatafan. Now, who is this man, and why is it that of all the people, the 10,000 people of the Ahzab, Allah chose one specific man, and through this man, the entire battle the Ahzab will fall apart completely. This man, Nu'aym radiallahu anh, is a type of ambassador. So he's not the leader of the Ghatafan, he's not the senior most chieftains, but he's senior management. He's not the chief, but he's senior, he's just under the chief. And he was the guy that would go and make trade agreements with all the different tribes in the region. And so he's traveled extensively. He knows all the key players and he has a good reputation. He's somebody that everybody trusts. He's one of the few people that knows Abu Sufyan personally. Him and Abu Sufyan are like on first name basis. They in our modern terminology, they would WhatsApp each other and share memes and things like that. He's been to Medina many times, and so he knows the Jews of Medina. He knows the Banu Qurayza. He knows, in fact, he does know the Banu Qurayza very well. And now he's met the Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam before. So he's one person that has sort of he's got a network with everybody, and he has a good standing with everybody. So what does Nu'aym do? Nu'aym makes his way to the Banu Qurayza. And he comes to the Banu Qurayza and he says, Banu Qurayza, my friends, my buddies, we go back a long time. You know, we the Ghatafan are also quite frustrated, and you know, we don't like what's happening between Abu Sufyan and this whole situation. It's been a long time that we've agreed to invade, but the invasion isn't happening. Abu Sufyan is the guy in charge. He's supposed to invade Medina, but we're all sitting here and waiting, and the Ghatafan are getting frustrated. And he then says to the Banu Qurayza, he says, you know what? Everybody is waiting for you guys to make the first attempt, the first step. You guys need to open the gates. You guys need to invade from internally, and then Abu Sufyan would invade externally. However, I'm telling you, as a friend, as a buddy, I wouldn't do this if I was you, because you are completely vulnerable. The minute you open up and you fight within Medina, if Abu Sufyan doesn't move, or if the Ahzab fails to enter Medina, then you guys are completely at the mercy of the Muslims, and you will be massacred, basically. So you've got all the risk and no collateral. In our terminology, I would say, well, guys, you Jews, you should understand this concept of collateral. So I would make sure that before I do anything, before I move forward, I would take certain hostages, and my suggestion to you is tell Abu Sufyan to give you 70 of his men to be held as hostage, and that if Abu Sufyan doesn't play his part, we will execute them. Also, he's saying to the Banu Qurayza, remember, Abu Sufyan is still a Qurashi, and Muhammad is a Qurashi. At the end of the day, blood runs thick. And perhaps Abu Sufyan is hesitating because he doesn't want to kill his own family members. And you know what? They can just pack up tomorrow and go back to Mecca. They can say, guys, you know what? We've been besieging this place for a month. We don't have an appetite. We've basically come and showed our strength. Let's just pack up and go home. And when the Ahzab leaves, who's left in Medina? You guys. And you guys will be massacred completely. So you are now committed. And there's no way you can pull out. So my suggestion to you, before things fall apart, demand from Abu Sufyan, he needs to give you 70 men as captives. And the Banu Qurayza was thinking, well, this is a good idea. Sounds fair enough, that you guys need to be committed to the cause, and if we fight together, but if you pull away, then we're going to kill 70 of your guys, because we are going to be at the receiving end of the punishment of the Muslims. Okay, now Nu'aym has already sowed the seeds of doubt within the Banu Qurayza, and he's made them hesitant to take the first step. In fact, he's framed it such that they are not going to take the first step. So now he goes over to Abu Sufyan, and he says to Abu Sufyan, my buddy, my pal, my Arab friend, you know what? These Jewish tribes, they are running the show, and they want us to put ourselves on the line while they sit back and call the shots and pull the strings. You have come all the way to fight your own kith and kin. These are your own family members that you're going to fight, but they're not willing to move. And in fact, the Banu Qurayza, they were allies with Muhammad not long ago. Now they flipped and they are our allies. What I've heard, and what my sources are telling me, is that Muhammad has made them an agreement where they flipped again, a second time. They've come back to his ally, to being his ally. And as a way to show their alliance to him, to show their support of him, they will give him 70 of your men as prisoners, or even execute them. So if the Banu Qurayza were to ask you for prisoners, to ask you for some kind of collateral, don't give it to them. Because I have a feeling that the only reason they are not moving, they're trying to use the situation to elevate their status and to come out as, closer with Muhammad and to get some privileges. So don't allow them to do that. Don't give them any of your men as hostages. And lo and behold, just as the meeting concludes, there in walks the ambassador of the Banu Qurayza, and he's, my chief has sent me demanding that you send us 70 of your prisoners. We refuse to fight until we have collateral, we have hostages to ensure that you are committed. We don't trust you guys. And now the entire coalition is falling apart. Abu Sufyan is furious with the Banu Qurayza. He's now convinced that they are, playing games. The Banu Qurayza is furious at the Azab, saying that how can you expect us to take the risk? And Nu'aym has begun to sow the seeds. And every day goes on. When are you going to fight today? Well, you send your army in first. We're not going to send our army in first until you send us those 70 men. We're not going to send you those 70 men. You fight first. And this goes back and forth, back and forth. And time is going. The Muslims have no idea what is about to happen. Abu Sufyan is absolutely furious, and he calls an emergency meeting, that this has to come to a conclusion. We need to move, because as time is going along, his army is becoming frustrated. The Ghatafan themselves are becoming weary, and in fact, amongst his own men, Nu'aym convinces them that this is a waste of our time, guys. We spent so much time here. It's expensive being away from home, being away from your harvest. Your family is at risk. It could be that your own tribe could be invaded at any time. So as time goes along, soldiers are becoming frustrated, and patience is wearing thin. Many of the tribes that are joined, the smaller tribes, are breaking away. So the Ahzab is falling apart, and Abu Sufyan is completely furious, and he is really angry with the Jews, and he calls an emergency meeting with Huyay, and he is telling Huyay that you need to convince your men that we are going to fight. That you have to convince your men, and if you don't do this, then we are going. This is not going to work. You're the guy. You brought everybody here. Convince your people, the Banu Qurayza, to fight. And the Banu Qurayza is absolutely adamant that they will not take the first step until they get these prisoners. Abu Sufyan is not willing to give any prisoners of war. So now they call, I said, this emergency meeting. It's a Friday that this meeting is being called, and Abu Sufyan is up to here, and he says to the delegation, this conference, he says to them that tomorrow, come what may, we're all going to go in together. Let us put all this aside, and we're going to go in together, and we'll invade Medina together. And as he is resolved to do it, the Banu Qurayza, the Jews of Banu Qurayza, say to Abu Sufyan, basically, sorry, but tomorrow is not going to work for us. What do you mean tomorrow is not going to work for you? We are at the end, we just need to move. Now is the time to move. And they insist that they cannot fight tomorrow. Why? Why can't you fight tomorrow? Well, tomorrow is the Sabbath. Tomorrow is the Sabbath. And we don't fight on the Sabbath. Abu Sufyan basically falls off his chair, or he's completely flabbergasted. It's what do you mean that on Saturdays you're not allowed to fight? And he says, what is Saturday except the day after Friday and the day before Sunday? Or you can fight on a Friday, you can fight on a Sunday, but you can't fight on a Saturday. This is the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard in my life. He's never heard this before. And for him, this is the height of mockery. It's like, you are taking me for a fool, a joke. All of this was a game. And he goes to Huyay. And he says to Huyay, are you serious that in your religion you're not allowed to fight on a Saturday? And Huyay basically begrudgingly have to say, yeah, kind of, that's our Sharia. We don't fight on a Saturday. We're not allowed to have a war on a Saturday. And Abu Sufyan is so upset that Huyay even goes to the Banu Qurayza and says, guys, please, I know we don't fight on a Saturday, but this is it. This is that moment. We have to kind of compromise and break our own Sharia. And and it shows you that when it comes down to the fact of the matter, Huyay was never motivated by religion or truth. It was never that he believed his religion was on the truth, or that the Prophet was a liar, or that Islam was false. It was purely motivated by jealousy, anger, power, whatever it might be. And so he's even willing to throw away his own principles. And so Huyay tells the Banu Qurayza, guys, let us just break the Sabbath and join Abu Sufyan in fighting. And at this point, Banu Qurayza is offended. They become more upset with Huyay. How the hell can you ask us to break this? You of all people are telling us to break the Sabbath. We will never break the Sabbath. This is one of our most sacred principles. It's like telling a Muslim, just eat the pork and let's just move on. There's no way we're going to do it. So, they are stuck. the Banu Qurayza says, look, we're ready to fight with you. We will compromise on the 70, but not tomorrow. Let's, maybe another day, but tomorrow's not going to work. Abu Sufyan is at his wits' end. He must make a decision. Are we going to go? Is tomorrow the day? And he is so furious that Huyay actually secretly leaves Abu Sufyan and he crosses over back into Medina and he goes and spends the evening with the Banu Qurayza, hoping that they would sort of keep him safe, because if tomorrow the invasion is going to happen, so if the invasion happens tomorrow, we don't know what Abu Sufyan is going to do. He's so furious, and so everybody is holding their breath that tomorrow Abu Sufyan is going to mobilize and he's going to go into Medina and the invasion is about to happen. Back to Medina. So that's all happening on the one side of the trench. On the other side of the trench, so on the one side there's commotion, there's a lot of movement, there's arguing. On the other side of the trench, it is quiet. The Muslims are sitting, it's cold, it's the middle of winter, they're cold, they're shivering, they don't know what's about to happen. And obviously they've heard the rumors that the Banu Qurayza and the Ahzab are on the verge of invading. It could happen tomorrow, and they're not sure is tomorrow that day. And so they're sitting and waiting for information, just basically making dua that it could be tomorrow is the end of the road. And they're desperate to know, is the invasion going to happen on Saturday? Now we jump maybe 10 years into the future, maybe even more than that. Long after the Prophet had passed away, long after this event, one of the companions, his name was Hudhayfa. Hudhayfa radiallahu anh, side note, Hudhayfa is well known as the keeper of the Prophet's secrets. Hudhayfa was that companion who asked the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam about strange things, who tell me about Dajjal. And so a lot of the stuff about Dajjal, Hudhayfa, hadith would be from Hudhayfa. Hudhayfa also knows who the munafiqs were. The Prophet sallallahu told him which people in Medina were hypocrites. And so Umar radiallahu anhu would say, I would always look if Hudhayfa was present at the janazah. If he wasn't there, then I wouldn't make the janazah. So Hudhayfa knew this secret, strange information about the Nabi sallam. Hudhayfa would ask, and so he would get that. So we're now jumping 10, 20, 30 years in the future. Hudhayfa is an old man. Hudhayfa is with his class of students, and his students who never met the Nabi Sallam said that, how we wish we were alive in the time of the Prophet, peace be upon him. And if we were there, they're telling Hudhayfa, if we were alive when the Prophet was alive, we would love him so much that he would never even walk on the floor. His feet wouldn't touch the floor because we would carry him on our backs. So Hudhayfa said, you guys think you're so pious and so mighty. Well, let me tell you something. And then he tells them, I want to tell you about the night of the Ahzab. It was a Friday night, paints the scene. It was Friday night. We didn't know what was going to happen. We were waiting that the invasion was going to happen on Saturday. And that night was an eerie night. It was a bit like creepy in that it was dark. There was a darkness that had come over us. And there was a storm that was rolling in. It was bitterly cold. And so we sitting in the darkness, in the cold, in the wind. There was a wind howling. And we didn't know what to do, what was going to happen. We all expecting tomorrow is the day we're going to be invaded. And the Prophet ﷺ says to us, now they're sitting around the Prophet, peace be upon him, and he says, who will go, the Prophet is asking the Sahaba, who would go over the trench, into the enemy lines, get information, and come back and tell us what's going on? And absolute silence. Nobody puts up their hand, not Abu Bakr, not Umar, nobody puts up their hand to do this sort of a mission. Also, it could be that the Sahaba we would expect, Abu Bakr, Umar, Bilal, all of them, they're too well known to go into the camp. It must be somebody that wasn't as well known. Hudhayfa is not really, he isn't from Mecca, he isn't even from Medina, so he's kind of not a well-known face. He can kind of blend in, whereas Abu Bakr is going to stand out. So again, the Prophet says, who will go? And nobody volunteers. He then says, who will go? And I will promise them, I will be his like witness, his supporter on the day of Qiyamah. And again, nobody raises their hands. Then the Prophet says, Hudhayfa, he calls him by name. And Hudhayfa says to the students, and when he called my name, like immediately he felt like, oh no, I must go. I was scared, I didn't want to go, but because he called my name, I had to go. I had to go. And this actually shows you a greater level of Iman. The Sahaba were not superhuman. They felt fear, they felt anger, they felt frustration, they felt sadness. Hudhayfa doesn't want to go. Hudhayfa is scared. But he's saying, because he called me, my Iman necessitates I must be obedient. And so Hudhayfa says, I stood up, and the Prophet ﷺ says to him, Hudhayfa, go into the enemy camp, get information, don't engage, don't fight anybody, and just come back and tell me what's going on. And then Hudhayfa said he came close to me and he touched my chest and he made a dua. And in that moment, when when his hand left my chest, I felt no more fear, no anxiety, and then I went into the into the trench and into the camp, and we continue inshallah in our next episode. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.